Hi Rory, hope you're well, and apologies for everybody for the bit of a delay. We all know technology can be sometimes a bit of an issue, especially when you're at home and you have the computer and the internet and logging in, so all that. So apologies about that. But welcome, Rory. So hope you're well and everything is great. First of all, as everybody knows, this is the rescheduled cybersecurity awareness live stream that we had originally scheduled for 2 weeks ago. So before we go, first of all, on behalf of AES and also behalf of everybody, we'd like to congratulate Rory and the Cyber Helpline for their great award that they won in September, which was the National Cyber Security Award and the Charity of the Year. So huge congratulations for that. I'm sure everybody did a fair amount of work and absolutely deserve it. So really, really well done as such a great achievement. So well done. Just if you could tell us a little bit, in case for our followers, if they don't know what the Cyber Helpline does and how you can help them, just to give them a bit of an information on how they can reach you, contact you, and what can you help them with.
Yeah, perfect. Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. And thank you very much. The award was an amazing thing to happen to us. We've been working really hard for years to help victims of cybercrime, and it was really nice to receive the award and have that kind of recognition for the volunteers and the work they're doing. So the Cyber Helpline is essentially the cybersecurity community coming together to fill the gap in support for victims of cybercrime. There are millions of victims of cybercrime and online harm in the UK every year. And we realised that cybersecurity experts, IT experts are the perfect people to step in and help victims once something's gone wrong. So we set up the Cyber Helpline to provide free expert help for any individual or sole trader in the UK who experiences something malicious online. That could be hacked accounts, it could be stalking, it could be sextortion, revenge porn, malicious software, whatever it is they face. We will connect them with an expert and help them through their issue until they're back on their feet. Our website is cyberhelpline.com. You can go there, you can use our chatbot 24/7 and be anonymous and get help, or you can use the chatbot to be connected to one of our volunteers who will jump on the phone or email with you and work through your case until you're at a point where you've got your privacy and security back, essentially.
Yeah, that's good. So just to dive right into the cybersecurity part, because last month was Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Obviously, we've been contributing and sharing information back and forth how people can stay safe online, what they can do to protect their privacy, their information, and all that kind of different things. Most of the things that we collected, one thing specifically stood out is when it comes to Wi-Fi security in terms of people hacking into other people's Wi-Fi. And that specifically goes to cyber stalking, because obviously we are more focused on stalking and with you, cyber stalking in our case as well. So how can people protect their Wi-Fi? And if someone wants to hack into their Wi-Fi, what information can they gain and how can they use that against them?
Yeah, really, really common issue. Probably 20 to 22% of our cases at the Cyber Helpline are stalking or harassment. And it's common that depending on who the stalker is or who the individual is, could be a neighbor who's close to the Wi-Fi, could be somebody who's got access to the house or previously been in the house. There's always a concern about access to that wireless network and what can be done. And I think that there's a couple of things there. I think that it's always important to set up your home wireless network securely. And there's some basic things that you can do that are really easy to do to make that happen. We've got a guide on our website about this, but it's really important to understand there are two ways that you can log into your wireless network. You can log in by just putting the password in and getting access so your device can get on the internet. But there's also an administration login. And that administration login allows you to change settings. It allows you to see devices that are on the network. And generally, change things and change the security settings. So anyone who's listening to this or worried about their Wi-Fi, logging into that admin login, having a look around, using our guide to make sure you've got the right settings will go a long way to helping keep your Wi-Fi secure. There's also a little bit of a misunderstanding about what can be done if somebody has access to your Wi-Fi network. So if you have a stalker or a cyber criminal who's on your Wi-Fi network, you want them off. That is increased risk for you. It's bad news, but actually takes quite a lot of skill and technology to be able to get onto a Wi-Fi network and then go from that Wi-Fi network into your devices, because you're having to find security flaws in those devices. You're having to get past firewalls and usernames and passwords and other things. So there is risk there. There is danger. There's some easy things you can do in setting up, but it would take a relatively skilled cybersecurity person to really take advantage of having access to a Wi-Fi network.
Yeah, this was one of the things because so during last month, I've seen quite a lot of people posting on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook their own experience that someone hacked into their Wi-Fi and they could see the mouse moving on their computer. But can that be achieved through Wi-Fi if someone was to hack into yours, but not the computer?
Yeah, so what almost undoubtedly, if somebody else is remotely accessing your computer and you are seeing the mouse move, you're seeing action taken on the computer, there is a very extremely high probability that that is malicious software. So a malicious software, what's probably a remote access Trojan, has been downloaded onto your machine, and that is giving somebody remote access. And that remote access just allows them to use the computer exactly like you are when you're sitting at it. They can type into it, they can move the mouse, they can see the files. And so that will be malicious software. And that malicious software most likely has either been installed on the device because somebody's got physical access. So if it's an ex-partner who's carrying out the stalking, they may have put that software on before they left the relationship or while they're visiting children or visiting the house. They may have clicked on something in an email, a text message, a direct message on social media that has enabled that malicious software to be downloaded. Wi-Fi is an option, but it's rare. Usually it's one of those other approaches that allows that malicious software onto the device and then allows somebody to take control of your computer.
Yeah, which is why one of the posts that received the most engagement last month was the do not click on any links or do not open attachments from emails, because it's one of the most easiest way to get something installed on your computer without your own knowledge. But also people should have to enable their firewalls in that, because that always adds an extra security as well. What about if they even have a VPN installed on their device that hides their IP, but does not give an additional extra layer to filter those?
Yeah, it does. And just talking about emails and attachments first, what's really interesting is that there's a perception that cyber criminals are doing something really technical. There's kind of a James Bond hive of technical experts doing stuff in the background. Cyber criminals generally either want to make money or they're driven by some sort of emotional driver like stalking. And they will take the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is probably just sending someone an email with an attachment and seeing if they open it, or sending them a link. Click this, here's a photo of you from the other day. They click the link and the malicious software is on there. So usually it's the easiest, simplest thing that is the case. And VPNs are great for a number of reasons, because if you think about what a VPN does, it creates a secure channel from your device to the internet that hides all of the traffic through the wireless router. So actually, you're encrypting all of your data. So even if someone had access to the wireless router, they can't see it. All they can see is encrypted traffic, so that it's just a scramble of numbers and letters. And that's useful at home if you're worried about your Wi-Fi network. It's good for your general privacy because you can hide where you are online, so advertisers, other people can't see where you are. But also really useful if you're out and about. You're joining public Wi-Fi. You can't guarantee the security of it, then, and you want to do something like log into an account or log into your bank account. Really good idea to use a VPN. So even if that wireless router in a cafe is compromised, doesn't matter because all your traffic is encrypted and you're safe.
Yeah, and the thing with VPNs, you can get some really cheap as well. I think a couple of pounds a month, and they're just knowing you have that extra security in terms of having all your data, well, your foods, your tracks are covered. So it'll be really difficult, and we require so much coding to actually trace it back to you. It always gives me an extra peace of mind because I like my tags, I like my VPN, and having it always enabled just to make sure, even if I'm at home, especially when I'm working with emails and banking files and such. So it's a really good way as well. And are there any VPN softwares that you would personally recommend that would be the best?
I think what you need to be careful of, like with all things that you buy or download onto your devices, you're looking for somebody who is reputable. So, a brand you can trust. You're obviously looking at the price and the commercial side. What you've got to be really careful of is some of the free VPNs that you see online now that actually are kind of using some of your data to make money back on you using the VPN. So I'd encourage people to have a look at some of the big brands and just look at commercially what works for them, what is easy to use, and pick somebody they can trust. Basically, there are plenty of brands out there, and a bit of googling around, you'll find some good stuff. But there is an increasing amount of kind of free VPNs that you just need to be careful of because you might actually be sacrificing your privacy to get the free service.
Yeah, 100%. You always have to do your research before you commit to something, especially if it's something that is designed to protect your privacy, because even that can sometimes backfire. So yeah, the other question was, so we were running a Q&A session on social media before and have a couple of questions collected. So one of the questions is we had, so what's the best cybersecurity good practice when you're in a relationship? So obviously, when you get into a new relationship, you start to trust each other. You share passwords, you share your Netflix, your Disney, your social media accounts. What should you do, and what should you not do?
This is a really good question because what people do in relationships often defines what can happen when that relationship breaks down. And so what we see really commonly in online harassment and cyber stalking cases is that where there has been an element of controlling behavior in the relationship, the individual has bought the devices, they've set those devices up. So they buy somebody an iPhone for Christmas, they set it up, they set up their Apple ID, and they hand it over for that individual to use. Now, the dangerous thing about that is that person knows everything about that device. They've set it up, they've configured it, they know your Apple ID. So even though you've got the phone, they can log into your Apple ID on any browser and see your emails and your photos and location and other things. And so take my biggest piece of advice in relationships is take ownership of your own devices and your own passwords and accounts. So don't let somebody else set them up for you. Don't let somebody else buy and or configure and set up devices for you. And just, it's really hard, as you said, when you're in a relationship because you're in love with that person, you trust that person. It's natural to share devices, to share accounts, there has to be some separation, because if that relationship goes wrong and that person has access to your usernames and passwords, which they can use to access your bank account, your email account, your social media accounts, your Google account or Apple ID that are tied to your phone, it just enables them so much access and control after the relationship breaks down. And it makes it that much harder to separate your life from that person's life, because you've got to retract all of that access. So, I'm not going to go as far to say never trust anyone, but you should take ownership of your own devices, your own personal security, and just make sure you understand what that device is doing, what apps are on it, and what is sharing information with somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. You always have to have that kind of what if scenario at the back of your head, just in case. But yeah, 100%, I agree. And that the same goes, because some of the stalking cases that we have within the charity we do have quite a lot of ex-partners. So they're in a relationship, and that can be prevented if people take these measures, so that kind of one step to reduce the possibility, which again goes to early affection, to make sure that it's not going to happen in the future and there's going to be no harm to anyone. So this is a really, really good point. You kind of touched on one of the questions that was my next one, which is obviously, as now Black Friday and the Christmas period is coming, so people will be buying tech to each other as a gift during the festive period. You mentioned to look out for that so people have the ownership of their devices. What else should they need to look out for? Because there are other ways that they can track each other, such as through Google Maps, they can access the locations, or if someone wants to gift an air tag or any location tracking devices, how can they figure out they are being tracked by someone that they don't want to be tracked by?
Yeah, it's also a really good question and really timely. So I think that, first of all, we're seeing loads of scams around shopping, fake products. And so there's a risk even in just buying devices currently. And so, watch out for really good deals that you get by email, phone, or social media, because you might be going to a fake site, you might be buying a fake product, and you might just be handing over money for nothing, essentially. So you've got to be careful around this time of year in particular. I think that what tends to happen at this time of year is people buy lots of technology, and that's great because there's loads of positive things that technology bring for us. But again, we've just got to be really careful. And I think particularly in what we were just talking about, if somebody buys you that device and it's in the box, then 9 times out of 10 it's probably fine. If somebody sets up that device, puts all your accounts on it, then at that point, they've got lots of access, and you've got to be concerned about that. But what are you actually concerned about? So things like location, really important. And one of the biggest concerns once stalking or online harassment or domestic abuse, those situations, location is often the big worry. And we see a number of ways that location is compromised. So it might be as simple as somebody's had access to your phone, they've set up, Find My Phone, for example, or the Find My app, and they've just connected their account with your account. So you're sharing location live all of the time. And there are similar pieces of functionality across lots of different apps like social media, where you can see certain friends, snap maps, that kind of thing. And so looking in those types of accounts, seeing what is looking at your location and what is sharing your location, is often really important. And then you've got the concept of dedicated, what's called stalkerware. So particular apps that are put on these devices, which give access to location, messages, phone calls, things that you are doing on your device, as well as sometimes being able to see what your camera is seeing on your phone. So understanding what apps are on that device, what apps are using the battery in the settings, and just getting a feel for what's on there. And then also remembering, it doesn't just have to be the device. if somebody has access to your email account because they've got your username and password, or they've got access to a device, they can simply go into the settings and have a look at recent logons, which will often provide an IP address and an IP address location. So it might tell them where the last user logged in. So there's a whole kind of range of ways location might be compromised. But most of the time, being curious about what apps are on your phone, what they're doing, having a look around, and you'll probably see most of the problems that way.
Yeah. You mentioned if people would have access to someone's login details to check the emails and even social media logins and like IP addresses, would a two-factor authenticator kind of solve that issue? Because not many people actually use the 2FA apps on their phone, which is a great way. So even if they were to know their login details, what the app does is it creates that 30-second window to put a code in to approve the login. And they do have the option to log out from everywhere within the 2FA apps. Would that help people with that?
Two-factor is the most powerful thing you can do right now as an end user to protect yourself. So what are we talking about? We're talking about when you log on, instead of just having a username and password, you get either a text message with a code in it that you've got to put in, or you have an authenticator app like Google Authenticator or Authenticator from Microsoft, and you look on your phone, get the code, and then input it in. And when you do that for the first time, and every account, pretty much every account online will offer this service. You can have two-factor on pretty much everything now, Facebook, Gmail, everything. You set it up for the first time and you say, remember me on this device because I trust my own phone. But if I ever log in from a different device, send me a code to my phone. And so that's really powerful because if your password is compromised, as in somebody else knows it or somebody else finds it out, that's not enough for them to get into your account. They also need to be able to get access to that physical device, your phone, so that they can get that text message or they can get that code from the app. And that's great because it's another layer of security for free and you never really see it unless you log in from a new device, in which case you just check your phone, get the code, and you're up and running. But what it also does is gives you an alert every time somebody logs into your account with your password, because the minute they do that on a strange device, you're going to get a text message that says, hey, here's your login code, and you're going to know it wasn't you and somebody else is trying your account. And then you have the opportunity to say, okay, well, somebody knows my password, so I need to go and change it for a start. But two, they haven't got in because they haven't got my code. Let me see what I can find out in the app about who's trying to log into my account. And it starts to build some evidence. It starts to build a picture of what this person is trying to do. So one, it's if I could give everybody some advice, use good passwords, use different passwords, and have two-factor, and that will solve 95% of problems in online accounts.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I have I actually have Apple's own because Apple finally introduced their own.
Cool.
So now it actually notifies me on the phone, on the watch, laptop, the iPad, pretty much everything that I own, that
Yeah,
there's a new login, and I don't even need the code because it's within my own device. I can just log
yeah,
in with my fingerprint or my facial. But every time it goes to a different computer or I try to log in from my partner's or anyone else's computer, it will prompt me to input the code, and I can authorize that. So yeah, that's really good, and I can seriously vouch for that. People need to use that. It is an extra layer, and it will notify them. And what's also interesting that the app actually stores the login attempt, where the IP address, so they can kind of pinpoint it to the person, to the location, which will be great for them to give evidence to the police, or should it come to a cyber attack, and that kind of going down further the line.
yeah.
We do have a question as well here in the chat. So one of the questions from LinkedIn is there anything I can do differently if stalking is at the workplace? For example, emails on the system?
Yeah, so this is also an interesting question, because it's not always the case that stalking is just in your personal life and it's your personal accounts and devices. It's often that either the stalking is somebody who is a colleague, and so somebody who is at work, or it's somebody who understands where you work and is trying to use your work accounts and your work as part of the stalking. And so it's an interesting one, because in a way it's actually slightly easier, because the access to evidence of what is happening. If the stalker is using the corporate network, so they're using their email account, and they're using the technology at work to carry out that stalking, then that's actually a good scenario in terms of evidence, because all of that evidence is owned by the company you work for. The police can go and ask for it. It's a nice, easy, straightforward process, assuming that you want to tell your work and you want to kind of be open about what's happening. And that's not always straightforward. And that is actually a much easier scenario than going to Facebook in the US and saying, give us some server logs of logins and try and help us identify this person, which often is really, really slow and doesn't always happen. What you've also got is, if you know who that individual is at work, you've also got people who know who that individual is. They know where they work. They know lots of information about them. And they probably also know lots of information about where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing. And so again, it helps you identify who this individual might be and what might be happening. So what do you do differently? I think for many, it's a personal decision about, do they want to go and speak to their boss, their work, about what's happening? And there are pros and cons of doing that for many people. But if you're able to do that and you can have that conversation, then a good organization and the right approach will be making sure you've got the support you need, involving people in IT who can start to gather some evidence from the logs that they have of what's happening on the network and these devices, and trying to build a picture to support the evidence. And generally, there should also be, if that is another employee, a disciplinary process that can happen there, as well as a kind of legal investigation if the police are involved. So often the first decision, like always, is getting the right help, understanding the risk, and then working out what to do about it. If it's in the workplace, then often the best approach is involving the right people at work in that discussion, while you're also talking to the police and people like Action Against Stalking to get the right advice.
Yeah, this is our social media theme for this month. So throughout November, we are sharing the workplace from the workplace talking from both the employer and the employee perspective. So what can employees do, and what employers can do, and what they should do, how they can get help, what different scenarios are, and that. So it was a really good question, and thank you much. Thank you very much for answering. It was really good. Someone on Instagram asked if they use an Apple Watch. I use one as well, so I'm kind of curious about it. Um, I'm concerned. Yes. So I use an Apple Watch, and I'm concerned that this is enabling my stalker to track my location. Is that true? I think it's
So
kind of difficult with an Apple Watch.
yeah, I think that when you have any technology, like a phone, like an Apple Watch, Fitbit, whatever it is, you are obviously giving up some of your privacy, but you are giving that privacy. That loss is really to Apple and any associated other companies who are involved. If you think about how a stalker would leverage that information, it's actually quite difficult, because first of all, you would have to have access to the Apple ID. So you'd have to be able to you'd have to understand the username passwords, and if it was two-factor, you'd have to have two-factor code. So you could log into the Apple ID on a browser and then log in and see what you can find in terms of location and other bits. And so in that case, it's no different from them hacking your phone. They have to get access to your credentials so they can log in. And then it's just about settings in terms of what you're sharing your location with on your phone and with your watch. So if you're, sharing your location with fitness apps and social media and other things, then that information is going to be shared in exactly the same way it would of how you use those accounts with your phone. So yes, it's an extra thing that can track your location and track other things you are doing, like going for a run, or what is that person doing now? But you would have to hack through quite good security you wouldn't be hacking the Apple devices because they're secure. And there's not a lot of evidence out there that Apple devices are being hacked. It tends to be software that is on those devices. And so actually, it's a minimal risk, in my opinion, having an Apple Watch. As long as your Apple ID and devices are secure, you should be fine.
Yeah, and the thing, I think when I first got my Apple Watch, it automatically prompted me to enable the two-factor authentication, as you cannot have it without, if I'm not mistaken. So it should automatically go, and that should reduce the risk of having someone hacking into your Apple ID or anything like that. Just two more questions, and then I shall let you go because I know you're a really, really busy man. So I promise I'm going to find some really good questions that we got from our audience.
Awesome.
So one was, this is my question. I was quite curious if obviously during lockdown, everybody was using their devices more often. They were in their homes more and working from home. Were there any specific trends that you discovered in terms of cyber stalking or cyber harassment? Was it more ex-partners or co-workers, or were there any trends?
Yeah, we definitely saw differences. And what was really interesting is that we saw stalking just as an issue increase quite heavily. And so, as more people were online, as people were restricted from seeing them at the workplace, from seeing them, round and about, people were moving online to carry out stalking behaviours much more frequently than they were before lockdown. And actually, if you just take cybercrime as a whole, we help with 45 different categories of cybercrime. In the 12 months since the first lockdown compared to the 12 months before, we saw a 362% rise in cybercrime. And so just this massive explosion of online crime. And stalking was definitely a big part of that. And we saw the things that you would expect people doing online. So we saw more direct communication, so communicating with them on phone, text message, through social media platforms. We saw a lot more people reporting fake accounts being set up on social media and being used as part of the stalking. We also saw a lot more gifts being used, so buying people gifts and sending them to their house as part of making people understand they're still there, they know where they live, and also just part of that campaign of stalking behaviour. So we saw more online, lots more direct contact. We saw a lot of gifts. We always saw that, but it increased quite a bit. I'm trying to think what else we saw over the last 12 months. I think we probably also, as part of that, saw a rise in attempted hacking of accounts. So trying to get into people's email accounts and social media accounts and trying to get some remote access online because they don't have that access offline. And then just the last thing there, remember that by definition, a stalker is obsessed. And this is a pattern of behavior which is repeating all the time. And that just because we're in lockdown doesn't mean stalkers aren't out doing the physical stuff too. So we're seeing more of the online stuff, but we're still seeing the offline stuff because lockdown isn't enough of a barrier for stalkers who are already breaking the law and are already obsessed with their victims and carrying out that behavior. So we still see the offline stalking behaviors too.
Yeah, and was there any specific in terms of was it more male to female or female to male, or in terms of, because obviously lockdown changed everything for everybody,
Yeah.
and there were new things coming up and the new things happening.
Yeah, we traditionally probably around 80 to 90% of stalking cases are what we think are males stalking females. The user that we're helping is a female, and a lot of the time where it's an ex-partner, you know who that individual is, so you know what sex they are. With straight cyber stalking, where all of the behaviors are online, it's actually hard to tell. The user, the victim, might have a feel for who might this be and what might their motivation be, but if the evidence isn't there, it could be anyone. And so we don't always have that information. I think because we saw more of that straight cyber stalking activity rather than a kind of cyber enabled stalking where there's online and offline elements, actually there was just more confusion about who might this person be. And that's actually a really scary place to be, because it's really scary being stalked anyway, but being stalked and not understanding who it is, where they are, what their motivation is, creates this constant fear of what might be happening, how it might happen, and how technology might be being used against them. So that online element, and more of that pure online element, adds a lot more impact for the victim often.
It's really difficult because you can be someone online and a completely different person in real life. That goes down to catfishing and scamming people and all that. Right. So just to close, for my final question, what are the best? I lost my question. Just bear with me while I find it. Honestly, I have so many notes in here. I was so interested. I'm so excited to have you on here. So, what's the best way for people to stay safe online from their stalkers? And that also goes just to go back again to the main points that you made. Let's go for 3 minimum. What would you say are the best things for people to stay safe online from their stalker?
Yeah, so I think first of all, the best thing you can do is get expert help. Stalking is a dangerous thing. There are tools and processes in place for experts like Action Against Stalking to look at the risk in that stalking case and understand what the right strategies are to deal with that stalking. So don't try and deal with it on your own. Reach out, get help, and get professional support on the stalking side, but also on the online side. And it's really common. People like the Cyber Helpline are working with Action Against Stalking and collaborating on cases to do the stalking bit and the technical bit so the person gets help. So get help, because stalking is dangerous, it escalates, and taking the right actions early is really important. I think, second of all, I think don't remove any access or take any actions until you understand what the risk is and how you're going to keep yourself safe. And just as an example of this, with stalking, we can see the smallest thing. We can see somebody changing their relationship status, to single from after a breakup with an ex-partner, somebody realizing someone, blocking somebody on social media, seeing somebody's logged into their account and logging them off. Those little actions are really natural things to do. You see someone logged into your email, you hit remove them. But if you remove that access, you don't know what the stalker is going to do next, because now they don't have access to your email, they don't have the same access to information. Are they then going to start following you? Are they going to change their behaviors? And that might get more risky. So get that expert help. Be really cautious about making changes until you understand what the impact might be. And some of those early things are really important to not escalate the stalking by accident. I think number 3, understand what your online footprint is. You know, what accounts do you have? What devices do you have? And look at what do you need? What don't you need anymore? What security have you got set up? You know, if you've got the same password for 30 different accounts, it's probably time to at least have a good separate password for your email account, your bank account, and then making sure that two-factor is turned on pretty much everywhere online. So I think understanding what you do online, what information you're sharing, and how you can protect that is a really important part of staying safe from a stalker. And I think finally, just collect evidence. And you know, somebody sends you a message, take a screenshot, save it somewhere safe, because even if you aren't afraid now, you aren't worried about the stalking behavior, if it escalates, you want that body of evidence where you can present that kind of timeline and say, this is what's been happening. And I think it's really important to say this, because technology is brilliant. You know, social media is brilliant, email's brilliant, phones are brilliant. You know, all of the technology we have in our lives are brilliant. And so what I don't want people to think is, you know, I shouldn't have a smartphone, I shouldn't have a smart doorbell, or all these things that they want because of security. So having good security enables you to be safe online. And so even if you're being stalked, you've got online security issues, you can get to a place where you have privacy and you have security online. You might need help from an organization like us or an organization like yours, but everyone deserves that online security and privacy. And so it can be done. You might just need help on the journey to get there. So, you know, enjoy technology, use it, but just make sure you're being safe while you're online and you've taken the right precautions.
Yeah, that's really important as well. And that journey can take time as well. So I think people should not be scared off by investing, let's say, 10-15 minutes a day to make sure that their accounts are safe and secure, so they will feel safer and more secure to be on social media, use their phones, and all that kind of things that we all love technology for. So it's a great way to communicate and everything. But yes, it's it will always be a learning curve for everybody,
Yeah.
even for you, even for me, even everybody, because it's always going to change and there will be new things coming out, and you
Yeah.
have to adapt to them.
Yeah. And it's hard because it's really easy for us to say sitting here because we're not being stalked right now. But
Yes.
if you're being stalked online and you're scared of the technology around you because it's part of the stalking, and you get to this place of kind of hypervigilance where everything is involved in the stalking, actually just logging in to have a look at the security of your accounts or seeing what emails you've got today can be a terrifying experience. And so it's really working at the right pace, doing the right things at the right time, and working at the pace of the people who are experiencing the stalking so that they can build their online confidence and feel safe and trust technology again. Because for most people, that trust stops the minute their technology is used against them. And because they don't understand often the complexities of technology, that makes the fear worse. And so a big part of our job is on the saying, okay, how can we explain these things? How can we get you moving in the right direction, but at the pace where we understand that you're afraid to open up your laptop or turn your phone on and trying to take those steps and always safeguarding the person. So it's a really, really complex area. And even though some of these steps are simple, it's not simple when you're in the eye of the storm of being stalked. And so we've got to be really cognizant of that as we deal and help stalking victims.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, it's easy for us to say what people can do, but both the Cyber Helpline and Action Against Stalking, we do help people. So if anybody is in terms of struggling and need help with stalking or cybercrime or cyber security, and we are there to help them, so they can reach out to us, and then we can provide the professional help that they need to get through and make those baby steps to take the control back that they need to regain their life and to be safe and comfortable in terms of who they are. So with that, thank you very much for joining me today. I think it was a very insightful and great session. And thank you for everybody for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed and you can take some information away with you. So thank you very much and speak soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.